This is a podcast from Partnerships for Wellbeing.
Hello and welcome to Ways to Wellbeing, coming to you from the global headquarters of our lovely wee charity here in Inverness, Partnerships for Wellbeing.
Yes, and he is Jeff Szynski.
I am.
And I'm Nicola Mackenzie.
She is.
And this podcast gets sent direct to all of our volunteers and supporters here in the Highlands. And it's also available wherever you get your podcast from.
That's what they say.
That is what they say.
Keep it cheesy.
Like and subscribe.
Right. So what we like to do is keep you up to date with what's happening at the charity and also talk to an inspirational guest or two.
Yeah, but before we introduce you to this week's guest, we should really talk about the amazing response that we've had from our new wheelchair accessible vehicle.
It is absolutely amazing, isn't it? I mean, some of the calls we've been getting at this stage, and we are still at the pilot stage of this. We're still training the drivers to use the car and operate the ramp and the winch. You've been getting training yourself.
Yeah, I have had training. It's really interesting actually, and it's quite a straightforward process. It's just practicing, I guess. But after the training, I feel really comfortable with it, so it's good. Yeah,
and the calls have been. I mean, they have been heartbreaking, haven't they?
Essentially. I mean, the amount of calls that we've been getting from people who are locked down, they can't get out because there's not transport available for them. And it's just so heartbreaking, isn't it? We've been really inundated with calls, haven't we?
I don't think we realised, we knew there was a demand, but I don't think we realised the scale of that demand.
I know.
And even the BBC News have been here filming because it's become a news story.
Yeah, I know. You should expect to see that very soon, actually.
Yes, you might even see me unless I'm on the cutting room floor. Anyway, so we're moving as fast as we can to get all the drivers trained, keep the car on the road as often as possible. And we really need, as we always say, more drivers.
Yeah, we're really desperate for the drivers. If you have any spare time at all, a morning a week, an afternoon a week, every other week, please do get in touch because we're putting quite a lot of pressure on our existing volunteers who are brilliant. But with a third vehicle here, we've got to ramp it up with the volunteers. Yeah, so please get in touch if you can help at all.
Yes, just a couple of hours a week would be great, fantastic. Anyway, let's change the subject for a moment. Are you a betting gal?
I don't think I've ever said that about myself, but I've dabbled now and then, I suppose. Yeah.
You're a big golf fan, aren't you?
I am a big golf fan.
So
yeah.
Do you have a wee flutter on the Masters?
Oh, how did you know? Yes. Yes, I do. I think it it keeps me interested. I love golf, but putting a wee bet on for the weekend, it keeps me interested in the match, and also I'm very lucky.
You've been lucky?
Yeah, really lucky, to the point that actually my sister, if she was ever to put on a bet, she says to me, "Oh, who would you go for? Because you always win some money." But it's that sort of luck and that sort of beginner's luck and that thrill that is dangerous, really, isn't it?
Beginner's luck. See, I bet on a horse race. I don't know how I told you this, but I might have bragged slightly. At the end of last year, I was invited, I was in Wales, and I was invited to a horse race at the racetrack by Carol Vorderman.
Oh, check you out.
One of those corporate tables. We were wined and dined, and then we went out to see the horses, meet the owners, and all of that. And I was lucky. But here's the odd thing: afterwards, people said to me, "Oh, is that you a gambler now, Jeff?
Yeah.
Is that you addicted? As if it could happen as quickly as that?" And maybe it can, because when I was a student, I had a friend who used to spend a lot of his time in one of those casinos in Glasgow late night because they gave you free food, sandwiches, and he became completely addicted. And even to this day, I mean, he got out of it, but this day he won't even toss a coin or buy a scratch card.
Yeah, that's the danger with addictions, isn't it? You just don't know when you're on the cusp of, being out of control, and it can all just happen so quickly. But it's scary.
Which brings us nicely to our guest this week, who is coming to us live from the other side of the River Ness. And it's Mike Youatt. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Nicola. Hi, good afternoon.
Mike, you're based at the Citizens Advice Bureau here in Inverness, but you have a particular role in terms of gamblers support and supporting families. Is that right? Tell us about that.
Yes, sure. We'll do, Jeff. Thanks very much. Yeah, my name's Mike Youatt. I work for the Citizens Advice Bureau, Citizens Advice Scotland, because we're a regional team, Gambling Support Service, which basically has two aims. Firstly, to support organisations to recognise gambling difficulties in their service users, for want of better words, or sometimes not only the gamblers themselves, but also it could be their partners, their families. We tend to call them the affected others these days. So we run training sessions and presentations for organisations, and also advise them of where they can advise their clients to go. But also for myself here in Inverness, I have a small caseload, and we suspect that will be becoming bigger over the next couple of years, as more and more people, or as more and more publicity gives the idea that there is in fact a growing gambling addiction. Gambling issues, gambling difficulties are very much a secretive, hidden addiction. So with a person who may have an alcohol dependency, you can possibly see that they're not always, completely there, or with a drug addiction. Similarly, with gambling, what you've actually got is something which is available to everybody 24 hours a day, 365 days, 366 days a year, and you can gamble anywhere in the world.
That's what's changed, isn't it? I mean, I remember as a child, gambling was something, there was dirty wee bookie shops, and people didn't really talk about it, but somebody would nip down and maybe put on a bet for your dad or your uncle or something like that. The only other time you heard about it was on the television when they gave out the prices for the horses and things like that. But now we think of gambling, we've been talking about sports and things like that, but it's scratch cards, it's online casinos, it's everywhere now, isn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, if I were to give you an extreme end story, it would be about an 82-year-old elderly lady who had some money free, or came into some money, let me put it that way. And she played online bingo. And within a week, she'd lost £81,000.
Oh my goodness me. Oh, wow.
Whether that's pure gambling or whether it's not understanding the rules or whatever, we don't know. But that is just a dynamic. I mean, the youngest case I've heard of somebody being prompted to take up gambling is a child of age 4. And the way they became a hardened gambler, and what happened with them was, by their account, was they used to watch the horse racing with their parents. And he then started tracking the leading horse till it got to the winning post and got him a sense of achievement. So, and he puts his hardened gambling down to that.
Mike, you use the term gambling harms, which seems quite a clinical expression in many ways. What are we talking about? Are we talking about families being destroyed, that kind of thing?
We're talking the whole lot there, Jeff. Yes. Gambling harms when it used to just be focusing on the gambler, it was just that one person who attracted all the focus. It's now been recognised that probably for each hardened gambler with a problem, there are 6 to 10 other people affected, or 6 to 10 other entities affected. So that could be partners, it could be children in the relationship, it could be the police, because it becomes into an issue of domestic violence, or theft for money, bankruptcy, taking the cost of accounts of law sequestration. We could be talking absenteeism, welfare services, social security benefits, benefit system, any other charities. So it's the effect on all of society. But they reckon that the total cost of all of that affected issues with gamblers in the country could actually be up to £1.16 billion. So,
oh my goodness, it's just
£1.16 billion.
Yes, 1.16. There are some amounts depending on how it's calculated locally, but the Institute of Public Policy Research in 2018 actually calculated that it could be a figure of up to 1.16 billion.
wow. Wow, it's just such a massive problem. Mike, how do we help? How do you go about helping somebody that's found themselves in that situation, or the family member of somebody who has?
It can be very difficult to know whether there is a gambling harms issue going on or it's something else. And certainly some of the symptoms could be the same of alcoholism, for want of better words, drug dependency, etc., drug misuse. But I think the first thing is to speak to people and to have an idea if there is something going on, and if there are some of the classics, person short of money, they're having to use food bank money is a big issue. It is just asking them or suggesting to them that they either come and see us, and I wouldn't necessarily even go down the line of gambling harms. You may have a suspicion, but just get your, is there something that the Citizens Advice Bureau can do? They have access to ways to actually to work through your problems. I mean, we have money advisors here. We have myself as gambling support. We have benefit advisors. We have housing advisors. Any of that, if that could help, in that case, it's really is a please direct them to us.
And if once somebody has been identified as having a problem and they do get referred to you yourself, what is the process? How do you go about helping them?
Right, thank you. Because what we do, or what I do, is we'd have a chat. We talk about their circumstances and so on and so forth. Not particularly any rush about it, but just to work through the issues. What are the problems? If they have been gambling, what have they been gambling on? Is it online bingo, online slots, horses, bookies, whatever? I would also, a lot of work has been done by Gamble Aware, and it's ITRB Gamble Aware, the charity. And they have come up with, Gamble Aware has come up with a range of screening tools. And they're not necessarily these in-depth psychometric experiences. It's nothing to be frightened of. It basically will ask, have you spent more than you could afford to lose? How do you think you've got a problem? Have you ever felt guilty? Just 3 questions. And depending on that, we'll talk through what it is that the person needs. And we will then either refer them to one of the formal gambling charities. So again, we're talking a charity like GamCare, which is across the United Kingdom, or we could be talking more local for counselling. Namely RCA Trust, which has got a spin-off in Inverness, and the Highlands at Addictions Counselling Inverness. We could also be talking about, if they're gambling online, there is plenty of online anti-gambling software that is available to people. So one called Gamban, and if one uses one channel, one can actually get that to block 15 machines for up to 5 years. So there are a lot of options out there that can be used.
Mike, it's great to talk to you. I mean, we're signposting the people who watch this to you. You're signposting the people to agencies that can help, and that's really what we're trying to do with these podcasts. If you don't mind, we'd like to make a wee bit more personal with you at the moment. Before we do our famous 5 ways to wellbeing challenge, there's a question in my mind. I don't know if it's cruel to ask you, but do you bet?
I haven't bet. I would say something I've come close to, but I haven't bet in a long time. Yes, used to mainly slot machines in pubs. But yeah, I then had to look after the kids and the family. But the nearest I've come to gambling, to be honest, and not a lot of people would see it as such, but it's still the same chemical processes, is I used to smoke. In fact, I smoked for 45 years. And I think I just got to the point with, you're getting a bit older. You've got a family here. How long do you want to be around for? So I gave up about 3 years ago.
Well, you talked about smoking, which is very much part of your physical well-being, and congratulations on giving it up, by the way. But now we're going to have to subject you to something even worse, which is our NHS approved 5 ways to wellbeing challenge. And I'll hand you over now to the care of my colleague here, Nicola.
Thank you,
So, Mike,
Nicola.
I'm going to ask you 5 questions.
Okay.
If you could if you could give me an example of each of those that you've done in the past week or so. Okay. So
Right.
the first one is connecting with others.
Connecting with others, probably, I mean, to me, that's very much about listening to people and being in the same mental space as they are. A lot of my background for the last 35 years has been in training and learning and development. And so I really do try to get into people's heads as much as possible. And as somebody once said, there is always something to learn. Everybody's got something important to say. So that's what I'll be content with that one.
Well, I think we can give Mike that point because I can vouch for him in this, because not only did he connect with me prior to us inviting him on the podcast here, but he's part of a community council here in Inverness, and that's how I first met Mike. So he's very much a connecting kind of a person.
Yes.
Yep.
One point already.
You're flying. Can you give us an example of a time you've been physically active in the past week?
Taking the dog out every morning for a nice walk. Yeah, that's the sole reason I had for. That's the sole reason I had for getting a dog. I carry too much weight. I need to get out and walk it off.
Now, wait a minute. Before we give them the point, how long are these dog walks?
They usually are about an hour or an hour and a bit, actually.
Wow.
So
we'll give you that.
Okay, we'll give you that point too.
Thank you.
Have you learnt a new skill in the past week?
A new skill, that's a difficult one. I have learnt things. I have learnt material from the web, and there's always research to do here. But a new skill, I learned how to juggle once. You got me stumped on that one. You got me stumped on that. I'm going to be fighting for the last 2 minutes.
I'm always joyful when we can't give a point, because we have to give you a prize at the end of this if you win, so I keep the prize. 2 more questions.
Can you give us an example of a time that you've given to others in the past week?
Have you been kind, Mike?
Have we been kind? Oh, yes. I think this is where we have to talk about, helping one's kids out, actually. One's just taken on a house in Nairn, and he needs to be tied over and so on. He's got family, and so it was birthday presents and practical birthday presents and looking after his kids and those sort of things.
Brilliant. Another point for you.
Well, you see, Nicola and I always disagree on this, you see, because I think when it comes to your family, you've got an obligation.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think you being kind to your family definitely deserves a point, Mike.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Grudgingly, I'll give you it. Last question.
This last question is a bit about mindfulness, and whether you've been paying attention to the present moment in the past week.
Yes. For me, one of the times I enjoy is actually going out with the dog, but it's also listening to the bird song that you actually get up here in Inverness. And I really would say, and this is not just to curry favour, but I really do, compared to where I come from, the southeast, you have so much lovely countryside and bird song up here. There is stuff that I haven't seen. It's my little piece of heaven up here. It really is.
How long have you been here, Mike?
3 years next week. So came up from the south. I retired, or occupationally retired. Our three lads and their families were already up here. One had come across from Latvia. The other 2 had just found it too difficult to live in the southeast, and so they came up, and so we followed them up afterwards. They're at the time they were Dingwall, Och, and Nairn, and so we thought, well, Inverness is like on a equal radius for all 3, for the child minding, and we now moved to the Crown, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful people up here. I really don't know how lucky they are. It really is lovely.
No, that's quite the advert for the Highlands, isn't it?
Yes, and you've been very lucky because you've won our Waste to Wellbeing fridge magnet.
Well done, Mike. 4 out of 5.
Right.
I will deliver that. The good thing about you being in town, I'll deliver that magnet personally, and it'll save me a stamp. So
Thank you so much for your time, Mike.
That's a pleasure, Nick. It's a pleasure, Jeff. Thank you very much indeed. I'll go mute now.
Thank you, mate. So that's it for this episode of the podcast, Ways to Wellbeing. We'll be back quite soon, and I think next time we might be talking about books. Is that right?
Yes, books and walking. Books
and walking all in one fell swoop. So, from me, Jeff Szynski.
And me, Nicola Mackenzie.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Ways to Wellbeing is produced in Inverness, Scotland by Partnerships for Wellbeing, a registered charity. To find out more about our services, go to p4w.org.uk.